I'm going to shoot a real quick disclaimer before we get started with the video. I just completed a 2-year review, kind of a rapid fire review of this mini lathe, and should you buy one, would you buy one, would I recommend one after 2 years of using it. The conclusions are still the same in that video. Please continue on to watch that, but I did want to say that since then I've been tackling some headstock noises, and that is a factor that should be added to this video. So I'm going to put a disclaimer here at the beginning of the video. After 2 years, this machine is starting to show signs of wear. Again, I believe it's from the quality of workmanship. The machine is still functional. It was still usable. I still had a great time with it. I'm still having fun with it. It still works. But I'm getting into that repair cycle now. I need to tear into things in order to keep it running. I'm starting to repair the things that were faulty from the get-go. In this case, it's a pulley. Spoiler alert. It's actually loose. The pulleys, the bearings that are supposed to be a press fit in here just fall out. So I'm collaborating with someone trying to redesign or remake this part. Anyway, we're gonna get this thing put back together, but I just wanted to say that at the beginning of this video. This thing is not without its problems after being used for 2 years. It's starting to show signs of wear and tear, substandard parts. I think this was a problem all along, but now I think it's a big part of my headstock noises causing issues, all that kind of stuff. So with that said, I'm gonna let you get on to watching the video. Should you buy a Vevor or any other benchtop mini lathes? Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Deez, this is my workshop, and today I'm going to do a 2-year review of the Vevor MX400 mini lathe, and do I recommend that you purchase one? This is going to be another should you buy a Vevor mini lathe. Doing an updated video because the last one I did, a lot of people are looking for that kind of content and they're finding it, but some of the comments I'm getting on there are get on with it and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to redo it now that I've got a lot of time to kind of improve my videos, and we're going to get right to the point. I've learned a lot of things since that first video. Would I buy a Vevor MX400 mini lathe? The first thing I want to do is go over some of the tech specs, some of the reasons that drew me to the Vevor mini lathe, this specific model, the MX400. One of them was the gears are metal. I think it's that sintered metal, the pressed metal, but they're metal gears. The size of the spindle bore is 1.5 inches. It's actually metric, so it's 38 millimeters. The 1.5 inches is quite large for these small mini lathes. You can get some really nice big stock through the headstock. You're not just limited to what you can get between centers. Keep that in mind. Most of them are not that big. This was one of the few rare ones that I could find that were this small with an 1.5 inch spindle bore. The tailstock's Morse Taper 2. It's very common for these small machines. I think some might be Morse Taper 3, but Morse Taper 2 is what this one is. The headstock is Morse Taper 5. I've never used that for any sort of attachments. I've just screwed them to the mounting plate. Those are the key details, tech specs that I found important with this thing. Another thing I wanted was the variable speed. Most of them are that way anyway. Nothing to worry about there. Keep in mind, the spindle bore was a really big one. The other thing, I know a lot of the chucks are smaller, maybe 4-inch or the metric equivalent. This one has a 5-inch chuck. It's 125 millimeter. So I just feel like that's a little bit beefier, a little bit larger than some of the smaller, really small units. How has it held up? The lathe has held up okay. I wouldn't say it's fantastic. I wouldn't say it's built like a tank. It still works. I'm still making projects with it. This is 2 years later. It's still working. I still like it. It is starting to show wear and tear though, specifically the bearings, the headstock. It's starting to sound not so good. I think I'm going to have to tear into the headstock, replace the bearings. Some of you might say, if you looked at my past videos, you might say, well, it was my fault because I used a side knurler. I mean, they make them. You should be able to use them. I don't think it helped anything. I doubt they're the highest quality bearings to begin with. I successfully knurled quite a bit of things with that, but I think that didn't help matters. Regardless, it's got kind of a gravelly noise to it. I think I'm going to have to tear into that very soon. Still runs though. I'm still making projects. There's cosmetic issues, things like that, but that's to be, if you're going to use it, you're going to have some wear and tear on that kind of stuff. Overall though, after I fixed all the initial issues, it's holding up very well. It still runs. I'm still having a lot of fun with it. Initial issues, let's get into that. The initial issues that I had with this thing, and you will have initial issues with any of these that you buy. The ones that I had were give issues on this cross slide, on the compound. The way that it was machined, I've got videos on that, you can go back and see those. The gib it's too small for the slot for one, and when it's tightened down, it gets cockeyed. So basically the gib would ride on the top lip of the dovetail where this mounts. Over time that's just going to wear it out, and it doesn't provide a good, stable, rock solid connection for these two pieces. So I needed to fix that right away. Luckily a viewer who found my channel early on offered to make me one. Worked fantastic. I'm still using it today. Thanks again for that. Potentiometer failed. I had to replace that. The RPM display, it has had a physical blemish. It's cracked or something. It works. It works, but it's from day one. That's how it arrived. It came with a physical blemish. The side panel over here, one of the screws is there's two thumb screws that screw on. One of them is threaded so cockeyed the thing just wobbles as you turn it in. Just quality thing. It does work. I mean, it holds the side panel on. The tailstock is junk. I tore into it not too long ago in a couple videos. There is a nut that's inside where there are some set screws that push against it to adjust the tailstock. It was too tall, and so basically you had this tailstock on essentially a single pivot point, to where you could really never even get that thing centered. I got it close. I have it close today. It's still not perfect. This thing is difficult to center. I'm just telling you. Button oilers. The holes where the button oilers seat, there's a few of them. I have probably 3 of them where the holes are oversized, and so the button oilers drop all the way down. They don't seat in there where you can squirt oil in and get it to flow out underneath properly. That's an issue I want to tackle someday. Maybe I can find bigger button oilers. I'm not sure. When I took this thing apart, I popped them all up level and flush, but the minute you use an oiler and push down on it, they just push all the way back down. It's just build quality issues. Finally, another issue that I want to point out before we move on to the next topic, I was missing a gear. Check all your parts when you get this thing. You might be missing something. You'll likely be missing something. Contact support. They'll figure out a way to make it right. Pros, very simple. The biggest pro on this thing is the price point, the entry price point. Many of us out there, probably most of you watching this particular video, are watching this video because you want to get into the hobby, but you're just not sure. You're questioning. These things are very attractive because of the price point. Do I want to take the chance? That's where I was. I didn't know if I would take to the hobby. I was really new to this 2 years ago. I didn't know anything about it. Didn't know what I was in for. In the end, I decided I'm going to take a chance. 50-50 shot. I still say that today. It's a 50-50 shot that you're going to get a functional machine that you can work with. Other pros on this one are the 1.5" spindle bore I just mentioned. The 5-inch chuck, I think that's a bit of a pro. I don't really want to say this is a pro, but I will say that it kind of, I was surprised that I actually received responses from support when I had issues. I'm glad I did. I should have, because I bought the thing. But when I reached out to them, they would always reply back, and we would communicate on a 24-hour basis once a day and come to a resolution that usually was acceptable to me. Cons: tailstock, junk. Be nice to get a different one. It's good enough, at least I have one, but it's not high quality. Nothing's high quality on here, by the way. Initial problems, you're gonna have initial problems. That's a con. You're gonna have quality issues. I'll describe why you're gonna have those issues when I get done with cons. Assembly quality, it's just gonna be unexperienced people just slapping these things together. They don't care. You know, they'll never speak to whoever There's no oversight, there's no supervisor. They just slap them together, throw them in a crate, and they're gone. Components, the components have quality issues. There's casting flaws in a lot of these parts. There's inclusions where they're just substandard parts. They wouldn't be on a quality machine. And the accessories, you might as well chuck that thing in the garbage the second you get it. It's junk. Now, I do have some of the wrenches here. The screwdrivers have long broke. They weren't hardened steel. They bent. They're just total crap. But at least they tried. They gave it to you. I do have the plastic toolbox. When you get it, don't think it's much. It's about this big. It's very small. Let me talk on the reasons why you're gonna have quality issues with these. There are probably one or two factories, probably one factory that makes all the parts for these, and I would say they probably make all the parts for the name brand resellers that are in the US and elsewhere, Australia, some other places. But there's a big difference. All these parts are getting made in mass production. A lot of them are just castings, right? So you got a forge or a foundry of some sort in China. They're doing it for pennies on the dollar here as far as creating these parts, and they're just mass producing this stuff. And then they get done, they chuck it in a corner. That's what they do. In the end, they do that for the trusted names out there. Your Precision Matthews Little Machine Shop, which I think is High Torque. Your Halfco in Australia. Jet, that's another company that I think is probably makes a pretty good product. I only have experience with Vevor and Precision Matthews, but not the Precision Matthews lathe. But regardless, those companies, before they put their name on it, make sure that the quality control and the build and the product that they receive has no paint flaws in it, has no blemishes, has no functional problems, it's properly trimmed, it's gone through from head to toe before they put their name on it and ship it out to your door. As such, you're going to pay a premium for that. But you're not going to have all the problems that you'll have with these. On the flip side, if you don't know if you're going to really enjoy this hobby, you can buy one of these things for less than $1,000. Know that you're going to have issues, sort those issues out, and probably get a functional machine for a lot less money. But that's why you have these problems. They are taking all the parts that didn't make the grade for those name brand parts, those name brand resellers, and they're slapping them together on these machines. I don't believe, like this tailstock wheel mounting, it's not curved the same as this other. These two parts were not made for the same machine. There's all kinds of situations like that. The front panels had rough corners on them. The build quality is terrible. The holes are drilled just, it's terrible. It really is terrible. A lot of it's just cosmetic. The inclusions in some of the castings, these name brands aren't going to put their name on it. They're like, no, throw that away. So they got two options. Back in that factory, the forge, they can either throw them all back in and remelt them, or they can slap these things together, create a fictitious company name like Vevor, Boberon, Moforn, Best Equip, you name it. A lot of those companies that don't make any sense, these names, and they just put a sticker on and they sell it in the US and hope that you keep it and don't return it or don't have any problems. You will have problems. But that's how these off brands are born. And that's Vevor's business model, I think. If you go to their site, they sell everything. And it's probably the cheapest made versions of all the stuff you can buy. It's just you're gonna have the quality issues with it. Should you get into the hobby? Because I think that's a question you need to ask yourself. If you're watching this video and you're thinking, do I want to buy a Vevor mini lathe or any other benchtop mini lathe? The question first you need to ask yourself is, should I get into the hobby? I think the answer is yes if. Yes if you're self-motivated to get in the shop and work on projects. Don't think, oh, that's cool, I'm going to buy this thing, and then stick it in your garage, and it doesn't make its own parts. You have to motivate yourself to get out in the garage and work on projects. If you tend to buy stuff and then not follow through, and you just sit on the couch and don't do anything, you rather just watch the videos, nothing wrong with that. Watch videos on YouTube, but enjoy that. Don't waste your time and money and energy buying one of these things. But if you really have an interest, get into the hobby. You got to be willing to challenge yourself. There are projects that are I've never done any of this stuff. I'm not a machinist. I'm a hobby machinist. Things like your my no-spill oil pot. I mean, I did some internal threading and external threading, and I've got the mill now, and there's all kinds of new things to learn and work on. You got to be willing to challenge yourself. You got to be willing to listen and take advice from others. Don't be closed-minded. People are going to tell you when you're doing things wrong, especially if you share it on the internet, whether it's a Facebook group or pictures or on social media or YouTube or whatever you do. People are going to be harsh at times. And I think most of that is coming from a place of caring for the most part. You know, some people just like to point out everything you do wrong, but for the most part, people actually care. They're like, look, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong. Safety is a big thing. You know, if I'm not practicing good safety, people point it out, and it's a good reminder to be safe in the workshop. You need to be willing to research how to use these machines, research the tooling, learn terminology. You got to be willing to put in the time and effort for that, and you need to be willing to spend money. This hobby is not cheap. Even if you buy a cheap lathe, you're still going to spend a lot of money on parts and tooling and raw materials and everything else. You just will. And finally, you got to have the space for the workshop. This thing doesn't go on your kitchen counter. You need to have space, and it throws chips and it makes a mess. There's oil. Make sure you got a good workspace for this thing if you want to get into the hobby. So if the answer is, should you get into the hobby, and you answer yes to that, the next question is, should you buy a Vevor mini lathe or any other benchtop mini lathe? And the answer is yes. The answer is yes, but. So should you get into the hobby? Yes, if. But this one is, should you buy one? Yes, but. And the buts, there's just a few of them. You need to be able to fix things. You need to be able to tinker with things. These things will need work. When you get one of these, it won't be just plug it in. I mean, you can plug it in and spin it, but there's going to be problems that you need to sort out. You need to have an interest in machining as a hobby. You need to have answered yes to the last section that I just put in there. If you don't have an interest in that and you just like to watch, you know, big machines, things that you haven't seen before, I'm the same way. I like to watch diesel mechanics shows and things like that. I don't have anything diesel, but it's interesting, it's fascinating to me. If that's what you want to do, just watch the shows. But if you want to build things and you want to take that next step into the hobby, you got to have the interest to begin with. And if you're watching this, no doubt you do. You need to understand there's going to be quality issues with these things. Whatever you buy, any of those brands that I listed, they're all from the same source. They're going to have quality issues. Some of them you can look past. Others you will have to fix, and even some you're going to have to work with support and fix that. Usually the support is going to end in monetary reimbursement. They're not going to come to your house and fix this thing. You're going to have two options with problems. You can get fed up and just send the thing back. That's why I used Amazon, so I didn't have to pay for shipping. Or you can talk to them and come to a reasonable monetary value of the part you need. Usually they're like, go purchase this part, send us the invoice, and we'll reimburse you. And they did in every single case that I needed to replace a part. The gear, the potentiometer, those were the two main things. And then they offered me a discount in reimbursement for the gib issues, because I was going to need to purchase a gib, material, gib stock, and fix that myself. And I agreed with all the solutions on those. And I knew that they weren't going to come to my house and fix the things themselves. So when I say support, it's really just financial reimbursement, things like that. You need to understand that you're going to have to fine-tune the thing. You're going to have to tweak it. You're going to have to make it your own. To be honest, that's part of the fun of the machine. And I made all kinds of accessories for this. I made this locking handle. I made these knobs for this adjustment because it had a red bozo nose, if you saw that thing. I made this lock lever here. Super handy. It beats using an Allen wrench all the time. I love that thing. That's all fun. I made the stands for my chuck holder, or the holders for my lathe chucks. All that stuff's fun. You're adding and you're making this your own. Don't be afraid to do that. It gives you projects, gives you purpose, gives you a reason to get in the garage and get started with this stuff. Highly recommend it. I'm not tied to Vevor in any way, shape, or form. I'm not tied to any brand or manufacturer for that matter. When I say should you buy a Vevor mini lathe, what I'm talking about is one of these cheap Chinese imports. If you have the money, if money's really no object and you're doing well, you can afford to spend 3 to 4 times the amount of one of these. Probably more like 4 to 5. You're going to probably spend over $4 grand to get a Precision Matthews shipped to your door. equivalent lathe by the time you pay shipping and all that stuff. I would recommend that you go with a little machine shop high torque, or you go with Precision Matthews, or you go with a Jet or Halfco. They start getting pretty costly, but the quality is not going to be in any comparison to this thing. If you're on a budget like most of us and you just don't want to spend a whole lot of money, give one of these things a shot. Just have a back out plan. Make sure you can ship that thing back if it's total crap. They're going to work with you and try to get you to keep the thing. They're going to offer you all kinds of money in different ways if you have problems. Just work with them and see what you can. But in the end, you're going to get the thing and it's going to spin and you're going to be able to turn metal and make chips. I've been having fun with it. I think you will too. Just keep in mind there's a 50-50 shot you're going to be needing to send the thing back. You're definitely going to have to fix some parts on it. It's going to have some issues. So if you don't want to have any of those problems, if you don't want to deal with any of that, like I said, you need to pony up and spend the money on one of those name brands. I would buy, if I had to do it all over again at this point, now that I'm 2 years in, my next lathe will definitely be one of those name brands, but it's just because I now know that I enjoy it. I'm going to use the thing, and I'm ready to invest the extra money now. But back then, in 2 years ago, this is the way to go. It was for me. And you know, I guess a caveat that's worth mentioning, you can buy 4 of these for the price of one of those. I mean, if I didn't want to mess with this one, take it off the shelf, buy another one. Then I have spare parts. Just some food for thought on that. I hope I got through that quick enough for everybody. I hope that helps some of you. Again, this is my 2-year review. Would I buy another one? Should you buy a Vevor or any other benchtop lathe? The answer is yes, in my opinion. It's worked for me and I'm still having fun with it. I hope you found this useful. Thanks for finding the channel. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. Click the thumbs up. That helps the channel as well. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.